Good morning, David and Rosie. Nice to meet with you both again. As you know, we met last week. My name is Niamh Muldoon, and I'm going to ask that you both call me Niamh, and as we discussed last week, that we'll use first name terms today. Firstly, thanks to you both for meeting here in the hotel. As we discussed in our pre-mediation meeting, I suppose I've explained to you the process for today. And I've explained that all information discussed here today is wholly confidential. So none of this will be disclosed to the university body unless you choose to disclose it in any form of agreement that we make at the end of today. As you both know, it's a voluntary basis that you're both here. So if at any time either of you feel that you want to take 10 minutes to have a coffee, or in the unlikely event that either of you feel you want to leave, you are free to do so. But I would ask that you alert me to that fact first, and that we might have a chat about your concerns before anybody would decide to leave today. I suppose in terms of my role today, I'm here as a mediator, so I'm here to facilitate a discussion between you both. You both have some concerns or some issues that have brought us to today, and what I'd like to think today is a window of opportunity for both of us, or for both of you, to, I suppose, discuss any issues that you have and see if we can't reach some agreement, or if you can't reach some agreement as to how they might be resolved. From my point of view, and as we discussed in our pre-mediation meeting, and as I suppose was detailed in the mediation agreement that you both signed last week, I'm going to ask some general housekeeping rules that I've met you both. You're both very courteous, and polite individuals. So I'd ask that you maintain that courtesy and, a mannerly interaction throughout today's session. My job here today is not to decide if somebody has been treated unfairly or if anybody has acted unfairly. It's really just to create a safe opportunity for both of you to exchange your feelings and your views in the hope of finding some common ground that will be mutually beneficial to you both. So, before we start, can I ask if either of you have any questions or concerns before we start here today? Oh, right. So the University Liaisons Officer contacted me and had asked that I facilitate this conversation or discussion between you both today. I suppose it's in both of your interests to explore the opportunities of resolving any issues that may be, or that may be present. And I suppose what I will say is that if for any reason we don't reach agreement today, and that's always a possibility, there may be further consequences arising out of the issues that we're here to discuss. They're outside of my control, so that will be a matter between yourselves and the university. But like I say, it's for, I suppose, none of the detail discussed here today can be used in relation to any other matter other than today's opportunity to try and facilitate a discussion. So, firstly, I'm going to ask for each of you to give an account of your understanding of events and concerns. I understand there's been some difficulties in the relationship. So, is there any individual who would like to give their account first? Or does anybody have any preference as to who would go first and who would speak openly?
I don't mind, I'll go first.
Great, and David, you're happy if Rosie opens today's session? Great, so Rosie, if I can ask you to give us a factual account of the circumstances in the last number of weeks or months that have led us to today.
Okay, well, up until recently, we had a very good relationship as lecturer and student. I started on the course 2 years ago, and we're coming up to finals very soon. Recently, I've had a very hard time at home. My mother's been very ill, and I've been stressing out and trying to keep on top of my schoolwork, which I have done, and I lost my part-time job. So financially, that's been a stress, and emotionally, it's also been a stress. On the day of the presentation was being marked for a large amount of marks for our end exam, and I was late for that class, and I missed my presentation slot. So I went up to David after the class and requested that I be able to do it at a later date, as I'd all the legwork done and I just needed 10 minutes to present to the rest of the students. David said, could I come and meet him for half an hour the following day, which I did, and I confided in him about my home problems, and up until this point he'd been very courteous as a teacher. He'd been, any questions we'd ask, he'd always explain in a really good way, and I actually quite looked up to him. We talked about me working as a speech therapist after. So I was quite surprised when, after I made my request, he turned around and just shut me down. He didn't seem to be flexible at all, and what I deemed to be quite an easy thing to allow me to just do the presentation on a different day. And he didn't seem interested in what was going on in my home life at all as a human being, and that really aggravated me. And I think, being that it's well within his power to have me do the presentation on a later date, he's caused me a lot of upset. I might have to repeat, and that would be a financial investment. All my work to date has been good and in on time, and I feel like perhaps there's a more personal underlying reason for him not allowing me to do the presentation.
Okay, David, if I can ask that you would give us an account of happenings to date.
Well, my position is that it's not up to me to make the decision on whether to extend the presentation date or not. That's just not for me to do. That is for the college authorities to do. And I explained that to Rosie when she came in to see me.
And David, if I can ask that you might, I suppose firstly, if you were to outline in detail, say the fallout of events that have, that has brought us to this stage. I hear that you're responding to Rosie in saying that some decisions may or may not be within your power or remit. But if you could give us a summary of your recollection of events.
Oh, okay. Well, Rosie's a pretty good student actually, very good student. And she's right when she says that, if she does well in the linguistics, I'd like to see her going on and doing the Masters in Speech and Language. Work has always been good. The presentation is, as she says, an important part of the final examination marks. It's not the be all and end all. It's an important part of it. It's not that it only counts for 50% of the marks. The remaining 50% will be a standard written examination, but it is a crucial part of it. And Rosie's work up until now has always been pretty good in that front. Her date for doing the presentation was well set out. She knew it. She didn't turn up on time for it. In fairness, she did ask to see me afterwards, and I arranged to meet with her. I'm pretty busy at the moment now. I'm actually covering for another lecture, you see, as well. So I've got a lot of stuff on. There's a bit of stuff also happening in the background, which is not relevant to here, but at kind of governing body level as well too. So I'm covering for another lecture. I'm doing my own work. So I gave Rosie half an hour because I'm really interested in, I think she's a very good student. I gave her half an hour. She came in. We had a chat about the presentation. She asked me about extending the date. I said that's not my decision. I don't have the power to do it. I can't make that decision. Then she started asking me about different, extending the time for doing various other assignments. I told her again that wasn't my decision. Then she started asking me about, the material stuff that I thought was a little bit close to kind of the bone in terms of, effectively giving her a bit of a help up on it. Now, that maybe I misinterpreted that, I don't know, but I did say to her, look, don't be asking me those questions. There's certain things I can talk to you about. And kind of just went on, and she mentioned a bit about her family and that sort of stuff and that type of thing. And then my half an hour was up. I had to leave it to go to another meeting. I went to the door, and the next minute there's this kind of, you know, she just kind of seemed to break down or something like that. But look, I just didn't have the time to deal with it. And anyway, it wasn't my problem. I mean, you know, there's not much I can do in this circumstance here.
Right. I suppose what I'm hearing from both of you is that you hold a huge amount of respect for the other. Firstly, that Rosie, you deem David to be an excellent lecturer, and that he's always been very supportive to you in the past. And that David, you believe Rosie to be a very, very strong student, who has a very keen interest in the area of linguistics, and that you're keen to encourage her. So, I think certainly there is something for us all to work towards, in that you had a very good working relationship in the past, so there's no reason why that can't be achieved again. Rosie, can I ask, what were the circumstances say that led to you being late, and what was the response that you received from David in relation to your request to deliver the presentation again?
Well, I was running late because my mum was having trouble getting up in the morning, and I helped her get ready, which I do every morning, and I usually make it on time. But this time I also had to drop in an interview letter application for a job down the post office. Now, I didn't know, but apparently they wanted this by registered post, so I had to run down to the shop and get it. So I was late for the lecture. I was only 20 minutes late, but I was supposed to be the second person up, and so he'd already started somebody else in my time slot, which is fine. But I still don't see why he's going through all the formalities when it would be very simple to just allow me to do it at the end of class another day. His response was protocol. I have to go through the chain of command to allow you to possibly redo the presentation, but the way he said it was like it wasn't going to happen. It would be so easy for him to just let me do it. It's 10 minutes, nobody in the class would mind, so that's what happened. And
David, can you explain to me and to Rosie what the usual procedure would be in circumstances like this?
I mean, Rosie knows this because she's done these presentations before, so she knows that everybody's given their slotted and allotted time. It's a very fair system. Everybody knows. They come in, they do their presentation, everybody in the class gets an opportunity to consider it. And if people, and in general these presentations are done as part and parcel of ordinary course work, but the significant bit about this presentation was that it counts for marks towards the final examination. So it was a very important piece of work. I'm kind of a bit shocked, because I didn't realise, I'm kind of a bit shocked now to hear that, you know, Rosie was down posting a letter on that particular morning. I mean, this was a very important piece of work. It's for our final examination. So the normal protocol is that you turn up, you come in on time, and you take your allotted slot. She wasn't there on time. There was nothing that I could do about it. I mean, I have to be fair to everybody else. I just can't make an exception in her case. The statutes of the college don't allow me to do it in any event. There's a well-known procedure set out. I did say to her in the course of the meeting, and I don't know where she's getting the impression from, the alternative, that, you know, if she made the application, I'd have no problem with her making the application, and I don't have any problem with her making the application. Right? I mean, you know, she says, well, I have to say, that was until I heard now about the letter and the interview. But I mean, on balance, I would still think that I could go ahead and support it. I think she's going to get it as a matter of course. They nearly all do. It's very rare that somebody doesn't get them.
Right, so what I hear you saying, David, is that you think that there's every possibility the opportunity will be afforded to
A
Rosie.
probability, I'd say it's a probability. I'd say it's 90 to 95%.
Okay.
She just, all she wants to do, she just wants to come in at a time that suits her and do it in the class. I'm not going to do that.
Okay, thank you,
I
David.
can't do it.
And Rosie, can I ask, can you summarise to me exactly the information that you, or I suppose the content of your meeting with David in his office the following day? I understand it was a half-an-hour meeting. Can you tell me what information you set out to David on that day?
Well, I can, but just first of all, I just want to say that I had a deadline for the application, and if I didn't get that letter in, then I wouldn't be able to afford the fees to finish the term. So it was just as important for me to continue to do the course as it was for me to be at that meeting. So it was catch-22, and I didn't think that it would be such a big deal to miss the class. When I went in to talk to him for half an hour, I discussed with him, first of all I said, the course is going really well, I'm very sorry I missed the presentation, this is what I'd prepared, and then I told him, what was going on at home, about how I'd lost my job and how my mum is sick at the moment. And I thought that was fairly obvious as a reason as to why I'd be, why I'd missed the class. Now, David's saying that's not a good enough reason. I can't think of a better reason other than having to drop out. That's my option, to drop out and not finish the course. So that's what we discussed. And then I asked him if it would be possible to do the presentation at a later date, to which he replied that we had to go through protocol. Now, I don't see why we have to go through protocol when there have been other times students have been late with their work, not necessarily for the state-governed exam, but it's him who's marking our exam anyway. All I needed was 10-15 minutes in front of the other students. It shouldn't be a big deal. To have to go through the system is just one more thing for me to stress about, and I don't think that's fair.
And Rosie, tell me exactly the response that you received from David.
David said that it wasn't within his power, which isn't true, to allow me an extension on the presentation, and he told me where the office was to go and fill out the forms for an extension. The forms would have taken me, a significant amount of time to fill in. I had the work done. It was there, it was ready to go. All I needed was to present it.
And were there any other requests made by you to David other than the opportunity to deliver the presentation at a later stage?
Yeah, he's saying now that I was asking inappropriate questions about other assignments and asking for other deadlines. I was just inquiring as to whether the other deadlines were flexible, and the questions are the kind of questions we'd ask in class. So I don't know what he's saying about me, asking leading kind of questions, because that's not true at all. I actually resent the implication, because I've never tried to get ahead on any of my assignments in any kind of immoral way, and that seems to be what he's saying or implying. I don't know where that's coming from.
Okay, and David, can I ask you to explain to me what questions were posed by Rosie to you and your responses to them?
Well, we'd agreed to meet to discuss the fact that Rosie had missed our presentation. The presentation is part and parcel of our final exam. It's not within my power to grant her extensions. It's governed by the statutes of the National University of Ireland. It's a final examination. It's not like, a piece of ordinary coursework where you can agree with somebody an extension, right? There's a protocol that has to be followed, has to be gone through. I explained this to her. It's not up to me to do it. I don't have that power. I can't call the shots on that particular one. She seems to think, and still seems to think, that I can't. That's a fact. Secondly, she was giving me the indication that other assignments, which will also form part and parcel of coursework on another module in relation to her final exam. She was also asking about getting extensions on that. Now, and she was inquiring about the nature, the confidential nature of material. Now, to me, coming in and asking for me to give her a private extension of the presentation, asking to give extensions on the assignments, inquiring a little bit close to the bone, I would have felt, about the content of it. She seemed to be looking for favoritism. She seemed to be looking to get something above everybody else. I didn't say it was immoral. I mean, lots of students will look for any advantage that they can. Just made the point that I'm not that type of guy. This has to be done on a fair, level playing field for everybody, and she's not going to get any special privileges or favours from me.
Okay.
So, you know, I did say to her that the fact that her mother was unwell, and the fact that you know, she had issues, certainly is going to help her in relation to getting the extension. I've seen students with lesser excuses get the extension, so I don't see this as a problem. All she has to do is actually go in there and make the application. It's going to be granted as a matter of course. Nobody is going to prevent her from completing her finals.
Okay.
And if she wants extensions on the assignments, she's going to have to make the same case as well too. She's going to have to make it to the college authorities, not to me.
Thank you, David. Rosie, if I can, I'm going to summarise, I think, the concerns that you have, and please feel free to add any detail you wish to this summary, or to correct me anyway. I suppose from your point of view, your concerns in relation to, firstly, obtaining an extension. Secondly, I suppose some support or understanding in relation to your circumstances from the college. Are there any other matters, other than, you know, say those two areas of concern for you at this juncture?
Well, time is an issue for me. In terms of filling out the forms and the applications, waiting for them to come back. I'm also trying to apply for jobs and look after my mother. So that's, you know, a big pressure. If I don't meet the deadline, I'll have to retake the exams. That's redo coursework, and you know, that's also financially you have to pay to redo your exams. Money I don't have. So that's another concern for me.
Okay. David, in terms of any concerns that you may have, it seems to be in relation to the procedural aspect for any request for an extension. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I don't have any discretion on this. I don't have the power to do this.
Are there any other areas or, you know, matters that are of concern to you?
No, I mean, I'd like to see the student, you know, working within the system, and I'd like to see her completing her course in accordance with the curriculum, and I'd like to see her getting her finals. As I say, I do think that Rosie has a very good chance of getting in the master's course in Trinity at a later stage, and you know, I do think that she will do well in speech and language. And I'm sorry to hear about her difficulties, but I mean, you know, this is her final year. You know, she'll have to work her way around those. That's life, I'm afraid.
Okay. What I propose to do is to summarise the issues of concern on the board, just that we're all focused on what the concerns or what the issues that are to be dealt with today. So, at the top of the board, I'm just going to note that up until this point, there was a very good relationship with you both, just to keep that in focus as we discuss the matters. So, I'm going to, I suppose, the first issue, in terms of trying to title that, shall I say an extension or an application for an extension in relation to an extension, application for extension of time. Is that a fair description? You both accept that that reflects the concern. Forgive my scribbles. And secondly, I suppose it's in relation to I suppose support for your personal circumstances from the college. Is that a fair application, both in David supporting you as your lecturer and in the college supporting you to enable you to complete the course?
Yeah, I'm not asking for particular, you know, ongoing emotional support, just understanding in this particular set of circumstances.
Okay, so I'm going to coin that understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any other issues that either of you would like to add into the mix today, or for consideration? So I think if we can frame the areas of concern, you can then set your minds together.
It's just my issue is I just don't want to have complaints coming in against me. I mean, like, I've done nothing wrong here.
And I suppose from the point of view of the college, Rosie, has a formal complaint been made?
Yes.
And that's when the liaison officer asked that I get involved in an effort for you both to mediate. So, in terms of, I suppose it's within the power and the grasp of you both today to reach some agreement in relation to any issues that have happened up to this point. So I think, from your point of view, David, any concern or any complaint that's been filed, this is the reason why we're here today to discuss that. So if you both can find common ground, it may well be that the matter ends here today if you're both happy with any agreement or resolution that's reached.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to you both? Okay. Firstly, if I can ask Rosie, I suppose the issue of applying for an extension. You mentioned previously that you're aware of other instances where other students have obtained extensions, but you also mentioned that they may or may not have been for a state examination. Can you expand on that and explain to me the procedures that you're aware of, or how these other students have come about obtaining an extension?
Yeah, well, any other time we've had presentations, and we had mock presentations, and we also had presentations for our coursework. Dave's been quite flexible with the dates. If somebody, there are certain people who miss class all the time, and it's okay for them to go and do it, at the beginning of the next class, at the end of the next class. Why should I think any differently for a state-governed exam? I would assume that the manner in which he dictates the coursework is going to be the same manner in which a formal exam is. And
if I can ask you just to clarify for my benefit, what's the difference between a college exam and a state exam?
A college exam is something that counts for ongoing assessment. It's 10% of your final grade. So, while the exam in and of itself mightn't count for 100%, it's part of a percentage that goes toward your final grade, which to date I've done very well in, and my expectations are for a first at the end of this course.
And so that's a college exam?
Yeah.
How does that differ from a state exam?
The state exam, as David said, this particular one counts for 50%. They're brought through a governing body. David listens to our presentations. The class give feedback, and David hands them in to the Department of Education. Basically, they're not marked by David, but at the same time, the deadline itself isn't on the day that we did the presentation. So.
And David, if I can ask, you mentioned earlier that you were involved with some extracurricular work or some duties outside of your role as a lecturer with the governing body. Does that have any impact on any of the circumstances we're discussing today?
No. There's just two. There's a lecturer out on maternity leave at the moment, so I'm covering for her work. So I'm pretty busy, and as I say, I'm also involved I'm working on a subcommittee with the governing body at the moment in relation to the revision of the statutes of the college, and we're also looking at a development plan for the next 5 to 10 years. So it's quite interesting stuff, but it doesn't affect matters. I know the point that Rosie's making, and maybe I've kind of spoiled my students in some way by being flexible with them. My plan, my aim really is to try and get the students to do the work so that they can achieve their potential. And there certainly is a first in Rosie, there's no doubt at all about it. But when it comes to the actual NUI exams, which Rosie calls state exams, that's a different system. I have no control over that. And once you're within the system, you've got to work within the rules.
And David, can I ask you to outline how any student would go about seeking an extension for an NUI
It's
exam?
actually only a formality. I don't understand why the fuss is being made about this. It's a mere formality. She's going to get it.
And
Nobody's going to step in. I'm sorry for cutting across this.
what I was going to ask David is what is the process? You described this application process as a formality. What is that process? Can I ask you to outline in detail?
The process is that she goes to the examinations office. There's a form which she completes. The form outlines the reason as to why she's seeking the extension in relation to this particular piece of material and the circumstances which arose. That form was given to me. I countersign it on the basis that the report has already been made to me by her as to the circumstances. And there is a section in it that asks for my opinion as to whether I believe that there's merit or not merit in it, but ultimately that decision will be made by a higher body than myself. And I mean, I've already given an indication that I'm going to tick that to say that there is merit in it. And normally, the student gets the result back within 21 days, and normally the result is that you would be granted. That's why we try and have all of our course material done before the end of formal lectures and before the commencement of the exams. And as you know yourself, well, you mightn't know obviously, because you're probably out of the exam system for so long, but I mean, formal lectures will cease in or about the 14th of April, and the exams won't start until the 1st of May.
Right.
So, so that's where we try and get the coursework done and completed and presentations done, so that students have nothing else to concentrate on other than getting through the examination at the end.
So what I hear from you is that there is sufficient time
but Rosie's
in the coming weeks for any such application to be made by any student.
I agree,
and to achieve an extension.
But Rosie's eating into this time at the moment by pursuing this complaint against me, where what she should really be doing is getting her application in and getting on with it.
And Rosie, can I ask, I suppose the issues that we've outlined on the board, in terms of, I suppose, your, what concerns do you have in relation to David? Can I ask you to remind us of those?
How do you mean?
I suppose you made a complaint against David. Was it in relation to issues that are of concern to you that we've outlined on the board, or are there any other issues that you would like dealt with today in relation to David in his role as your lecturer?
Well, it's predominantly the issues we've discussed, but also David said, I don't know what all the fuss is about. I don't know what all the fuss is about. I don't see why he's causing such a fuss over, he simply would hand in my work the following day or whatever, 2 days later. It wouldn't make any difference to the...
Rosie, can I ask, can you explain to me, in terms of the actual process for obtaining an extension, given that it's an NUI exam, do you accept and do you agree that procedures are such that it's not within David's power at the moment to grant that extension?
No, I think now it's not, because it's gone so far, that we've gotten, the university authorities involved and you involved, and now, there's a certain amount of David can't be seen to back down or whatever. But at the time, all he had to do was hand in my markups, along with all the other ones, which he had in his office. All he had to do was just allow me to do the presentation the following day or the following Friday. It wouldn't have made any difference.
And Rosie, it is, I suppose, we're all agreed that it is an NUI exam, or this presentation contributes towards an NUI exam.
Mm-hmm.
And you informed me earlier that an NUI exam was different from a college exam. So with that in mind, do you accept that it's not within David's power at the date of your request, your initial request, and today, for him to grant that extension without recourse to any other body?
No.
You don't. So can you explain to me what it is you think David could have done?
He could have just allowed me to do it the following Friday or the following day.
David, if I can ask you to respond to Rosie, was it feasible for you at that time to grant an extension without recourse to any other body?
The difficulty here is that this is the final exam, right? And the degrees are awarded by the NUI, they're not awarded by the college, right? The college aspect of it helps, and that's how you get through your first year and your second year and your third year. But the degree is actually awarded by the NUI. Therefore, it's under a different set of rules and regulations. And the presentation material, because we're using a form of continuous assessment here, presentation material is very is an important part of the exam. It's the student's own work and an opportunity to present it. Every other student in the place knows what the rules are. They know what the rules are. They know what's required of them. They can't be turning around and making exceptions in the case of Rosie. I'd be accused of favouritism. I'd be accused of doing things above and beyond. And I just can't be seen to do that. And I mean, there are college authorities follow the rules as set down by the NUI, but they clearly envisage situations such as what Rosie has outlined, where she's missed it for a specific reason. Lord knows I missed a final exam myself one time years ago, but I just had to follow through on the rules.
What I hear from you both is that, firstly, Rosie, you're very optimistic in terms of getting a very good grade and being very successful in the course, and that David deems that Rosie is a very good student and is fully capable of obtaining that grade. Rosie, can you outline to me any way, say, forward from here? Are there any steps that you think could be taken now with a view to you reaching, the optimum grade?
Well, I would like to just present what I have already prepared to the class and be marked for that without having to go through the process of filling in forms, chasing up. I also have to submit my previous grades, chasing up my previous grades, getting a form from David. All I have to do is have 15 minutes.
And Rosie, I suppose David has outlined to us the procedure involved in any such application. Do you accept that would be the correct procedure? You would obtain a form to be completed from the college form office.
Well, I think he should apply for me to be allowed to have the extension because of all the fuss he's caused.
And Rosie, I suppose, can I ask who in the normal course, say if it was another student, a friend of yours, found herself in the circumstance that she needed an extension, is it the normal procedure that the lecturer or the student seeking the extension would make that application or complete that form?
Well, I've never heard of it happening to anybody else.
You've never heard of any other student making a formal application?
For an extension? No. I don't really get on with the people in my class that well anyway, so I don't really know them on a personal level to talk to them like that.
Okay, and can I ask you, in terms of, say, the procedure in applying, given that I suppose it's going towards your ultimate grade, do you think do you think you would be open to the idea of you completing the form?
Well, I'm probably going to have to at this stage. I still think his conduct is out of order, though.
And David, can I ask, can you outline how, I suppose, to me the end goal is that Rosie, that an extension will be granted. How would any such extension be obtained? Can I ask you to outline the procedures to me?
Well, I mean, what we could do, and I mean, what we could do is we could ask to have it fast-tracked, right? So that if Rosie completed it, say, today, and got it in with a covering letter from me explaining that I want this particular one fast-tracked, that I want, and I'll be quite prepared to outline a reason as to why I want it fast-tracked. Now, we mightn't have to wait for 21 days, and she could be doing the presentation by next Monday.
So I hear you suggesting...
This is Wednesday now, so we could fast-track it and get that done.
So, David, what I hear you suggesting is that yourself and Rosie would complete the form together.
Well, it's Rosie's application. It will always be Rosie's application. I mean, I'm not sitting the exams. It will always be Rosie's application. But I'm prepared to put in a letter supporting her in getting it fast-tracked.
Rosie, would you care to respond to David, or how, you know, what is your reaction to that proposal?
Well, that's probably the only option at this stage. David's brought it to the point where it is at a higher level. I have to go through the formalities of the system. I would appreciate him fast-tracking it and adding a cover letter. But I also think for future reference, classes should be told of the difference between a formal exam and ongoing college work. I think that wasn't highlighted to me. If I had known that it wasn't flexible on that day, then I absolutely wouldn't have missed it.
And are there any proposals, you know, that you can make to improve the situation?
Just that all the lecturers tell their classes, you know, at the beginning of term, when everyone's there, maybe in an email so that everyone has it, of the, you know, the procedure. I mean, we're kind of allowed to look at the state exam, you know, regulations if we want to, but nobody's going to go look that up, you know, without being directed there, given a link or something, or you're even just told in class.
David, can I ask?
They're sent the links. They don't bother opening them. And when I was a student myself, I didn't bother opening them. That's human nature.
So what I hear you saying is that this information was made available to the students, but they may or may not. Rosie may or may not have been aware of it.
It's up on the college website. It's there. Nobody goes into it. I can understand why they don't.
We don't go into it, but you kind of think after 2 years in the college that you've got a grasp of how the exams work.
And Rosie, so what I hear you saying is that you were aware that the information was available to you on the website, but that you personally have not been familiar with it. Is that what you're telling us? Okay. I think there will be some areas that are getting lost in translation, if I can use that term. If I can bring it back a little bit, I suppose in terms of how you both progress from this position, are there any suggestions that either of you would have that would be of benefit in terms of progressing the matter?
Just that he does what he says he'll do about, you know, fast tracking my.
And I suppose if we can keep it in mind with the two issues. So just firstly, in seeking an application for an extension. So I suppose there was a proposal that the form would be completed by you today, Rosie, with David's assistance, and that there may be an application to fast track that form. Is that an accurate reflection of what's suggested?
Rosie won't require any assistance from me. The form is very simple. She won't require any assistance from me in completing the form. But to fast track it, I will do up a letter that would be attached to the form, and I will also make the phone call. I'll do those two things in order to ensure that it gets through quicker.
Rosie, I hear David saying that he will provide a letter to accompany a form completed by you in addition to making a phone call. Do you think that would be a benefit?
Like at this stage, that's probably the best thing that could come out of this. I don't think it should have ever happened in the first place, but to make the best of a bad situation, yeah, that would be appreciated.
I suppose rather than leave any grey areas here, I hear you say, Rosie, that you feel that David has brought a level of formality to this circumstance, in that you weren't aware of the difference between a college exam and a state exam. I've heard David tell us that the difference between the two exams was set out in information, and information was made available to you. So, I suppose, do you feel there are any greater efforts that David could have made to highlight the difference, or how would you suggest this circumstance be avoided in the future?
Well, I think that on the first day of every year, we set out what is going to happen on the course or on the module that we're doing that term. I think it should be covered before every new term for 10 minutes, just to go over the differences, how you hand in your papers, who you get them signed by, all that sort of stuff. Because, I mean, we both acknowledge nobody reads it, you know, on the website. Why would you go read it? You'd think you'd know at that stage. So I think it should be highlighted to students.
Yeah, I think there's probably a bit of confusion here, because what I'm saying is that the rules are on the website, right? At the start of the year, every student was clearly aware of the fact that they were involved in final exams. Every student was aware of the fact that some of the course material, the presentations, were going to go towards the marks for the final exam. So they were all aware of that fact. I certainly didn't sit down or do a lecture when they had drawn their attention to rule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't believe that's appropriate. But they're all aware of the fact that they're involved in an NUI system. I don't think it would be expected that we'd go any further than that. And these are adults, they're able to make their own decisions. We don't have to spoon feed them in relation to that.
But if you're giving leniency on your own exams and coursework, then we would expect the same of the state exams. That's the protocol that's been set out for us.
Well, the fact that I, you know, have spoiled my students, you know, has now been used against me. I think that that's just, you know, complete distortion of.
And I suppose what I hear from you both is that David has facilitated students with a degree of freedom in relation to college exams, where he had the discretion to do that, but that degree of freedom cannot be afforded to students in relation to state exams. Is that a fair reflection of what we've been discussing?
Yes, but I didn't know that he wasn't allowed that leniency in state exams.
But you accept that he doesn't have discretion to give that leniency in relation to state exams?
Well, I know that now, yeah.
You accept that now, okay. So if I can bring it back, I suppose, if we can structure, or if we can make some more suggestions as to how we move on from this situation. So I understand that there's a suggestion that you would both, that Rosie, you would complete a form today, and that David, you would provide a letter and make a phone call seeking.
Rosie, is that just for the presentation, or what do you want to do about the application, the assignments?
I'll get all the other assignments in on time.
So just to confirm, Rosie, the only matter in which you're seeking an extension is in relation to the presentation?
Yeah.
So there's no other...
No, but it's just, I want to be very plain and clear here again, that the assignments are governed by the same rules, so that if Rosie can't get them in on time, we're going to be facing the same problem again.
So what I hear from you, David, is that you're anxious that in light of the personal circumstances that Rosie is encountering in recent months, whatever difficulties, you know, whether it's a family member falling ill or financial difficulties, that you're stressing to her that in the event it is in the event that it's in any way likely that she's going to struggle to meet a deadline, you're highlighting to her the procedures that must be met.
It's the exact same procedures, and that if somebody is not in a position to give me their assignment on time, then I'm not in a position to grant an extension of time to that, and they must go through the same procedure again.
And Rosie, what I hear from you is that you're saying that you don't see any reason why you won't have your assignments in on time, but that you are aware of the procedure.
Yeah, and I also think that the procedure should be the same for college exams as for the state exams, because they're like a warm-up for the state exams. They might only count for 10%, but I know of people who've handed all their college work in late. That might only be 1%, but that's 1% that they didn't deserve, you know.
And David, if I can I ask you to respond to that suggestion?
Oh, I'm going to run my course my way. Thank you very much. And a lot of good students have come through my course. A lot of good students have gone on. I believe that my methods produce the best out of students. I don't make the rules in relation to the NUI exams. That's a system that we have to work within. But I'm not going to have my course content dictated to me either by the NUI exams or by a student as I say, I'm quite prepared to support Rosie in her getting the extension here, but I'm not going to change the way that I do teaching because I believe it's beneficial.
So I suppose, David, what I hear you saying is that in relation to college assignments, you do have a discretion in relation to granting an extension or accepting late work in certain circumstances, and that you're happy to proceed in that way. So, Rosie, can I ask you to respond to that?
I don't think it's fair. I suppose David doesn't care what I think.
Can I ask you to expand on why you don't think David allowing an extension in relation to some college assignments, but not being able to allow an extension in relation to state exam assignments, why that isn't fair?
Well, I just think it might only be, as I said, it might only be for a small mark, but it's still a small mark. I think every mark counts. I think it left me in a situation where my understanding was I would be granted an extension and I wasn't. Now, maybe I should have gone and read all the 5,000 rules of the state exams, but from what we'd done already for 2 years, everyone was granted extensions before. So it allowed me to believe that that was how exams are run in the college. I don't think it's fair. David doesn't care what I think or about my personal life, so there you go.
Oh, well, no, I do care about your personal life. That's unfair. I mean, I am going to support you in relation to what you're saying, but like, you're not the only student in the place. There's 65 students specifically doing the course. I'm also covering lectures for my colleague with another 45 students. I'm involved also, as I say, on the development plan for the college for the next 10 years and on the statute revision of the college. So I have more than enough work to do, as well as my own research and that sort of stuff. I've given a lot of time to Rosie in relation to this. I'm encouraging Rosie. I believe that there's a future for Rosie, particularly in the area of speech and drama. But I'm not going to start changing my methods simply to suit one student. Who quite frankly, Rosie, I mean, if you had gone about this 10 to 14 days ago, we'd be ahead of ourselves. Instead, we're here in front of a mediator. You should have done this you should have done what I said 10 to 14 days ago. Made the application, got it in, we'd be well on track now.
Rosie, can I ask you to respond?
I still think he could have avoided all this by just letting me do the thing at the beginning or the end of the next class.
And I suppose about 10 or 15 minutes ago, Rosie, I think we acknowledged that there was a distinction between, say, a college exam and, say, any coursework that was contributing towards the state examination mark.
I think he's just being formal for the sake of being formal, to be honest. Is the mark for this presentation, is this contributing towards your final mark? Yes. And
that final mark is awarded by the state board?
Yes.
So this presentation, am I correct in saying that this presentation forms part of the state's board examination mark?
Yeah.
And in that circumstance, would it be usual for a lecturer to have discretion to allow an extension?
Probably not. Like going by book, no. But I think given that I have been so good all the way through class, you can call that favouritism or not, I think he should have used his own discretion to allow me. However, we've discussed today that I have to go through these formalities at this stage, so fine, that's what we'll do.
I suppose if I can just focus on the term at this stage, Rosie, is there, I suppose my question to you is, do you think it was feasible for you to be granted an extension without making a formal application?
Not to be granted an extension, but just to do the presentation.
David, if I can ask you to clarify whether or not it would have been feasible for Rosie to do the presentation and or
this is a fundamental problem here. because of the fact that this is an NUI exam, because of the rules that apply, and other students may well be aware of it. I mean, like if I had, you know, everybody was aware that Rosie was supposed to do the presentation, she didn't do it. What if she had been slipped in at a later stage, and what if somebody had found out about it, either another student or the whole lot? It would have been far worse from her point of view. In the end of the day, by going this particular way, it's done formally, correctly, and properly. There's no fallout from her point of view, there's no fallout from my point of view. The whole thing is transparent and above board. And I appreciate that she feels frustrated about the fact that, you know, indulgences were given by me during the course of college exams and will continue to be given by me into the future. That it's a different rule for this system here. But them's are the rules, and we've got to stick with them.
Rosie, can I ask, do you accept that? Do you want to make any comment?
Like, he's not giving me any opportunity to say one way or the other, like, this is what I have to do. I think the way he conducts it is wrong, how he allows other people extensions, but my thoughts have no bearing on how he teaches, so.
And I suppose what I heard from David was that he has the discretion, he has the freedom to grant an extension in relation to college exams. He doesn't have the freedom or any power to grant an extension in relation to state exams. Do you accept that?
Well, I know that now.
You know that now. And so that being so, do you think it was possible for David to have granted the extension in the very first instance?
Evidently not, because he didn't want to jeopardise his own job. He didn't want to potentially jeopardise my mark, but he didn't explain that at the time. I felt like he just shut me down after me bearing all the news about my personal life. I felt just completely shut down, and maybe if he'd handled it in a different way, I wouldn't have gotten as upset as I did.
And Rosie, what I hear you saying is that you don't think David gave an adequate response to you when you first raised the issue, but that you now do accept that the procedure that must be followed, and there was no other opportunity for David to grant an extension, that it has always been the case that you have to make a formal application. Is that what I hear you saying?
I abide by the rules, which I now understand, but I feel he could have conducted himself in a better manner.
Can I ask how he could have can I ask you to expand on how you feel briefly, how you feel he could have conducted himself in a better manner?
Well, anytime, you know, we've been after class or I've been handing any assignments in to David, he's always been, you know, jokey, and when he's answering questions in class, he always brings it down to, you know, a very human level, you know, analogies for, you know, your home life or your social life or whatever. I kind of expected the same response of him when I went and told him something very personal. I expected him to be a decent human being about it, whereas he just referred me to the college counsellor and said that it wasn't possible for my extension to be granted because I had to go through the formal protocol. At that time, if he'd explained his reasons as to why I had to go through formal protocol, aside from just saying because it was, you know, the state exam, then, you know, maybe I would have understood. But it all happened in about 3 minutes. He just rushed out of the office, and that was that. So.
Okay, David, can I ask you to respond briefly?
You see, I had a request to meet, and I understood it was to deal with an extension. And I said there was a half hour. All I needed to know was the basis for the granting of the extension, so that when the form would come to me, I'd be able to tick it and say, yes, that's. Then I got this long stuff about all, you know, a whole raft of issues, which quite frankly are none of my business whatsoever. And I did say to her that she should go to college counsellor, because that's their line of work. It's not my line of work. I'm a lecturer. I had an immediate issue there, which was that one of my students, a very good student, hadn't done her presentation, hadn't done it on time, and this had followed a pattern. She's been late for lectures lately and all that sort of stuff as well too, you know. But I wasn't pulling her up on that or anything like that, but you know, this particular issue had manifested itself. And I just said to her, look, there's no point in talking to me about the personal issues because it's not my remit. I'm not skilled, I'm not trained in it. You need to go talk to somebody who knows about that. That's the only reason why I wasn't fobbing her off or anything like that. And I'm not, as I say, I'm not trained, and I didn't even have the time to give it. You know, I was under time pressure, and she knew that at the meeting.
Okay, I think that we're probably coming up to a time where it might be appropriate to take a break, maybe break for lunch. So if I can summarise where we are at this moment in time, I think both of you have outlined your perceptions in relation to and concerns and issues in relation to recent happenings. I think we've identified the main issues being in relation to the application for an extension, the procedure and the process around that, the interaction between both in your office, David, when your initial application to David was made, and then I suppose in general in relation to your personal circumstances and the level of support and or understanding shown by David, and I suppose his direction to you to contact the college counsellor. I think that it's been proposed that Rosie you would complete an application form seeking a formal extension, and that David will support you in that by providing a letter to accompany it and possibly making a phone call to ask that the matter be treated with some urgency. So I suppose the first hurdle in relation to obtaining an extension seems to me that we have some common ground and I suppose the rough proposal for a resolution. What I think we've achieved some very good work here this morning. I think you've both shown an understanding in relation to the other's position. And what I would now propose is that we will break for lunch and we'll meet back here in an hour and a half to continue the discussion, that you might both reflect on the other's position and the details and information exchanged this morning with a view to making some further progress towards resolution this afternoon. Is there anything that either of you would like to add? Are there any questions either of you have at this time?
No.
Well, thank you both for your cooperation this morning. I look forward to meeting you again in an hour and a half, say at 2:30.